Before I proceed any further, I crave leave to recall that dreadful day, today, 81 years ago, in that so-called Third Reich. Bevor ich noch etwas sage, bitte ich höflich um Gestattung, dass ich einige Worte zum Gedenken der schrecklichen Taten, der schrecklichen Tate des 20. Juli des Jahres 1944 äußere. This was the day when some very brave and valiant individuals risked their lives to end a tyrannical regime and had to pay very dearly with their own lives because they were executed. Dies war der Tag, an welchem einige sehr mutige und tapfere Personen ihr Leben riskierten und sogar mit ihren Lebens zahlen mussten, weil sie gegen ein übles Regime sich äußerten und jenes Regime zur Liebe ihrer Heimat und ihrer Nation beziehungsweise Deutschland und die deutsche Nation äußerten und jene Nation beschützen wollten. Because these individuals wanted to protect the true identity of the German nation and Germany as a whole. Einer dieser mutigen Personen war Graf Klaus von Stauffenberg. One of these individuals was Count Klaus of Stauffenberg. However, I crave leave to extend my further thoughts in English as it becomes too grave an inconvenience for me to speak in two different languages. Dennoch bitte ich höflich um Verständnis, dass ich meine weiteren Gedanken auf Englisch äußere, weil es mir nicht leicht fällt, mich in beiden Sprachen gleichzeitig zu äußern. Und ich habe heute relativ viel zu sagen. And I have today many things on my mind, many of which are of course not very encouraging, but rather depressing ones. These people risked and paid too dearly with their own lives because they wanted to see a world free of tyranny, free of oppression, free of injustice, free of inequality, free of inequity, and a world in which all should live for one another, in service of one another. Alas, their sacrifices have not been recognized by most of us, and are not being recognized even today, 81 years later. People are dying simply because tyrannical regimes are oppressing those who put their trust in those regimes. Similar to a very error they have committed because they trusted the wrong individuals. People are starving to death in Judea and Samaria, also called Gaza, simply because they are coming to those centers in order to collect food and water, not because they are terrorists. People are dying in the Sudan because rival so-called battles are continuing between the tribes. People are dying in Eastern Europe because a dictatorial regime wants to possess, even though he possesses today, even today, the largest of all the countries. People are dying in various other parts of the world because tyrannies are prevailing over humanity and equity. Today is so-called the 20th of July, a day on those brave men in Germany sacrificed themselves, even their own lives. What did we really learn during these 81 years? I venture to ask myself. What can we do not to repeat the errors which were committed some 9 decades ago, when people wrongfully elected a person who would become one of the most notorious dictators in the human history, at least of the recent past. People are dying today, even in countries which are neighboring to the state of Israel, because they belong to the so-called minority community, or even minority communities, like the Druze, who are deemed to be related even to the late father-in-law of the prophet Moses. People are dying in other parts of the world because they are speaking out against injustice, even in countries where tyranny is not an exception but has become a rule, because the tyrants cared about none other than themselves and their own individual family members, or those who support them blindly. Should we also fall into that trap? Should we also be blind as those who support them blindly? Should we not speak out, even though we have the opportunity, unlike the oppressed people of the Third Reich, or the oppressed people of North Korea, or the oppressed people of a large East European country? What does the freedom of speech mean to us if we don't exercise it properly? People are dying in the Middle East because too many of us are totally silent even today. I render my sincere regrets for the car horns, but the sound and the noise of the falling of bombs and missiles are far worse in many places, even in Eastern Europe, even in the Middle East, even in the countries around us, whether they be near or remote. How can we claim to be worthy human beings if we forget humanity? Humanity makes us human beings, or at least worthy human beings, if we truly believe in humanity and exercise and enhance the same. We deny our very identity of humanity if we fail to speak out and speak up and speak out repeatedly and relentlessly on behalf of those who are unable to do so or are too frightened to do so. Today, on July the 20th of the Gregorian year 2025, after that dreadful day on which those brave individuals in Germany who loved their nation, their people, and above all, true liberty and freedom based upon natural justice and equity, paid so dearly those 80 years ago on that particular day. This is a question I ask my own self, and with all due respect, I raise this particular question upon the minds of my fellow global citizens, while protecting all of you. By God's holy will, I pray for His mercy and His protection for all of you. This is my errand, this is my message. Only night before last I posted a message saying, Shabbat Shalom. And no doubt I have great regards for the state of Israel and the people of Israel. But how can we forget the warnings given to us by the prophets, including the prophet Moses, who said there be only one law for the native and the foreigner who dwell in our country, on our land? How can we forget the warning given to us by the prophet Jeremiah, who said to us that we should treat the alien and the oppressed as our own selves? How can we forget the commandment given by God the Almighty through prophet Isaiah, who said, share your food and clothing? And this, of course, includes water, medicine, and our love for others. How can we forget what the Almighty said through the prophet Ezekiel, that fathers should not pay for the sin of the children, and the children should not pay for the sin of their fathers? This is the very question I crave leave to ask all of you, even my own self. What will I answer before my Creator when I hope to meet Him someday, if I keep silent on this very moment, when so many of my fellow global citizens are dying and are at brink of starvation, and even are at the very moment too hungry, too thirsty, even to raise themselves from their places? I bid you the protection of the same Almighty who created all of us. And with all due pains in my own heart, I say, Shalom Aleichem. Peace be upon you. May peace prevail on this earth, instead of self-exalted pride, impertinence, and inhumanity.